going to start by inviting our two candidates that are representing the chair of the teacher section. So on the board, the chair of the teachers section represents teachers. They're the voices for our teachers. They're talking and listening and bringing back what we're hearing in the field and from our members. And so these two candidates are going to be possible board members that will represent our teachers. So I would love to start off by inviting Paula Cabas and Candace Proctor on stage. And we'll start the line there. What do you think AMS Montessori educators need from our organization to serve the children of today?
Want to go first? I can go first, yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think there's several things, but basically love, understanding. I've come to a small conclusion after my 12 years of working in Montessori, and it's that very few kids in the world get to have the opportunity to know Montessori. And I feel like teachers who are Montessori guides have this passion to bring this love and freedom in an environment for the kids, and we're lacking the opportunity to share with the world. So I feel like we could be doing more than what we already do.
Do you have specific examples of what we can be doing?
Well, I think that I feel like what I would want to do is to spread the TEPs, the teacher educational programs, around the world, so that more of us can be aware that Montessori even exists and share that with the kids and have them be part of this amazing, magical education.
Oh, thank you. Candace?
I think probably more than anything, teachers need to hear that the board understands that it's hard, because we don't do it for the money. And so I think more than anything, hearing from the top down that we're understood, and that most of the time it's not that we're not trying hard enough, it's that we have tried everything we know, or what we've tried or what we're facing is bigger than what we have the capacity for, and that it's not rooted in a deficit, it's rooted in a need for, one of the things that we talk about among the teachers, don't tell them I told you, is that, our training centers, while they're all wonderful, we also have a lot of different experiences. And so I think, I don't want to say standardization, but I think if we could get to some of the bare essential elements that we all need to be trained on consistently, and then that little bit of reminding us that we're scientists like Dr. Montessori, and so, being trusted. Here are the tools that you need. I trust you. Go and do it. I think that would be incredible for teachers.
What is your vision for this teacher education section?
The thing that I love most about being a teacher is the time that I get to talk with other teachers, and we get to have those moments of, I know, yeah, I get it, and I did this, and it was amazing, or I did this, and it was amazing last year, and this year, it was not so amazing, and so I'm going to try something else. I think just providing more opportunities for us to talk to each other and be with teachers who have more or different experience, that's what drives me.
Paula, what's your vision?
I have to agree. I think it's unifying. It's becoming one and learning from others and sharing your experiences and your doubts and the mistakes that you've, have been part of on your Montessori road, and find ways to become one in order to help each other as teachers.
Yeah. What do you think our members would find most important and meaningful for you to focus on if you were to be elected on our board?
I insist, I'm very passionate. I feel that when I joined AMS, it was 12 years ago, and then 3 years ago in San Diego, I attended the first Hispanic meeting, and there was only 8 or 9 of us. And then this year, the room was completely filled with Hispanic speakers who had so many questions and so many ideas that they wanted to share in order for AMS to grow outside of just the United States and bring that to all other nations who are dying to have Montessori but don't have the opportunity to make it part of their country and their kids. So, yeah.
Thank you. Candace?
I think it's looking at making sure that every teacher, no matter how small, no matter the extent of the resources that she has for her classroom or her school, I think it's, or he, feeling like we are all considered in everything that will affect us, because you know, I'm kind of packaged in a whole bunch of intersections, and I think sometimes just one aspect of who I am as a whole person feels like it's considered. So I think feeling like we all have a voice and that our voices have as much value as the voices next to us and above us, I think would be most important.
Well, thank you. Any questions from the audience? All right. Let's invite our 2 candidates who are willing to serve as the chair of the head section. The head section represents all of the administrators and heads of schools at our AMS members' schools and our accredited schools, and we have 2 wonderful candidates. And I'm excited to invite Patricia Colby and Debbie Sinoff-Lanford to the stage, please. Yeah. My questions are similar based on what I was thinking about when our committee worked on these questions. We were thinking about need. As a board, we're always talking about membership engagement, service, and what are our members' needs. So what do you think heads of schools need from AMS to effectively serve Montessori schools of today?
Sure. First, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be considered, and I'm very happy to be here. I think at the heart of what AMS needs to do and the Montessori movement per se is high-quality schools. If we don't offer a unique, outstanding Montessori education, we don't stand a chance. And I feel that heads of school are at the center of fulfilling that need. We ensure that a school is a high-quality school. So what I would like to do, or what I like to see AMS do, is make sure that this role, which is a complicated role, gets the different supports that it needs. And people in these positions have to manage not only a authentic Montessori philosophy, but also business knowledge, marketing knowledge, legal information. All that is at the heart of being able to be a good head of school, and of course understanding the teachers and supporting their philosophy. So what I would like to see is a variety of resources that heads of school can rely on that supports all these different roles that we play. I think that's important. And also continuing to build a network, because no one's a better resource than another fellow head of school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everything you said I would agree with. I think it is a very complicated job, and you know, one of the things that I will say is that sometimes as heads of school we lose our soul. I think we came into this job because most of us started as being teachers. We have children as the forefront of all the decisions that we make, but as life gets more complicated, I think this job now has progressed into something that requires not only a huge array of skill sets, but having been to the networking session of the heads, you have a lot of intergenerational issues coming up right now. There was a lot of brand new heads of school in there. Some have only just started the job. You had a wide variety of different types of Montessori schools, so public and private and charter and privately owned. All of those people have needs to be met. And so I think the challenge for us is going to be a big one in terms of how we help funnel. But I think AMS has always been a conduit for taking in that information. I don't have a set vision as to we should do X. What I do have a vision for is figuring out what the immediacy needs are. I think mentoring is one of those areas. I can say over the years I've mentored a lot of heads of schools and boards, and there is a consistent message amongst them in terms of just the day-to-day troubleshooting, as well as figuring out how to help set strategy and all the other aspects of running a school. So it's complicated and it's a hard job.
It is. How would you identify the needs that our heads, from our heads, that they need? What needs they need?
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure. And Patricia will answer it too.
I would say parents is probably one of those big ones. And I think the issues that come up with parents, I mean, as Daniel Coleman was saying, we love our children. We're very fear-based in terms of the parenting that exists today. And so as a head of school, you know, you're on the front lines, and how do you help navigate the complications with both parents, children, and teachers? So I would say the interfacing of all those different groups. You know, we're kind of like the hub in the middle, this, you know, in a wheel, we're sort of at that base, and all the spokes lead out from that. And so how we pull everybody back together so we're swimming down one stream, I think is one of the biggest challenges, I would say.
So the question is what kinds of specific resources we would like to see or programs? Is that what your question was?
Well, if as a representative of the head section, how would you identify what needs our members need?
Okay, so the best way to do that, right, would be to figure out ways and to have direct contact with the different heads of school, whether it be through the, we already do that listserv and maybe soliciting input through there, having a session at a conference like this, having a questionnaire, phone, you know, but I do agree that even though the role of head of school is similar across all schools, there are particular needs that come up with different size schools or an independent school versus a public school, having to interface with school districts and things like that. So we would want to make sure that all those voices are heard so that we can, you know, move forward and provide what help might be needed.
It's a great question that has come in virtually. How do you plan on individually supporting us and actually giving us the voice they are talking about?
I think one of the ways is sort of what I just mentioned, right? To be able to access the webpage, to be able to come to conferences like this and have sometimes, what I found very helpful, for example, is having a network of heads and small groups that we can talk and access each other. So maybe even having social hours or meetings here at this conference, it would be like, come and talk and share and tell us what you need and what can be brought up to in the sort of bigger picture of the organization.
Any additional thoughts?
Well, I think just adding on to that, I think there's a lot of very robust regional groups within the country.
Right.
And through those associations, a lot of the heads meet annually, or they meet, you know, they can meet several times a year. And then being able to pull in so that we are getting that diverse range throughout the country. But I agree, this is such a great opportunity for everybody to get together and share. I think social media and technology does offer those opportunities. Zoom calling is a great, we access that in the state of Illinois, and we let people call in, and they were able to ask questions, and it really worked effectively. So I think those are all great tools available to us.
What's your vision for this section, for the AMS heads section?
So what I can talk about is what I would like to see. Obviously, what's hard about these questions is not having been on the board already and not knowing what those meetings look like and what the give and take is. But The idea would be to keep in mind that who we're representing, that there's already people representing the needs of teachers and the needs of public schools and so forth, and make sure that we keep in mind that we're here to make sure that the needs of heads of schools are met. And I know that they're varied. And so for some teachers that are, some teachers that move up to being in a leadership position, that's a whole different set of needs versus someone who's, running a public school versus a small private school versus a middle-sized and larger school. So I think we just have to keep in mind and keep ourselves open to the idea that there are many needs that we need to represent, and to hopefully people also need to take advantage of this, right? And let us know what you need, right? Email, whatever, so that we can hear you.
Thank you. Any additional thoughts?
I think there's the troubleshooting aspect. It's just the day-to-day, like, oh my gosh, I need help. But there's also the long-term planning in terms of transitioning. I think there's a lot of heads of school who kind of have one foot out the door, and how well our schools are prepared for the new leaders coming through and how that is cultivated. I just came from a school where I'd been for many years, and how we brought up the next person took almost a year, and everybody was very ill-prepared. So I think the responsibility to cultivate and bring through new leaders is something that maybe this group could begin to think about as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
They're all being really good and responsive.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Susan.
Yes, Susan. There's a mic by, I believe, Gary.
We have 2 mics.
Okay, Michelle, would you be willing to stand here? And Gary, you hang out there. Thank you.
I was just wondering what each of you think makes you most qualified to serve in this position.
I'm sorry, did you say qualified?
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I've been working as a head of school for, I guess I'm going on it'll be 8 years next year. I've had the opportunity now to work at a school in California with a different culture, and now I'm in Virginia, which is sort of a different environment. I have also, I think I've seen this role first also as a teacher. I'm an elementary guide 1 and 2, so I've been in a Montessori classroom as well. And I feel that I've gotten a good understanding of how to better support, or how to support the guides in their classroom, and have seen 2 schools, so I think I have a good handle on the role, and I've been successful so far, knock on wood.
Which is an achievement.
Right. And I've also have really good experience working with different boards, not only at the 2 schools that I've been at, but also community boards, and have an understanding of what it takes to get a group of people to come together and troubleshoot problems and make sure that everybody's being heard so that we can move forward. Ultimately, this is a board, and it needs to function well as a board as well.
I've been a head of school for, dare I age myself, almost 30 years. So I had 10 years, I helped start a school in Wellington, New Zealand, which is thriving today. They have a high school. I just came off of being at Rogers Park Montessori School in Chicago for 21 years, and now I'm in Boulder, Colorado. I've been there 6 months, completely different culture to Chicago. During that tenure, I helped also start our adolescent program in Chicago, which was an interesting experience and is thriving today. I've served on several different types of boards, both Montessori, and I had the role in Illinois as the chair of the Illinois Montessori Illinois Montessori Association for 4 years. I served as the chair of the Illinois Coalition of Non-Public Schools, which was a diverse group of interfaith Montessori and other schools. And in chairing that group, it really helped me understand what diversity of thought is and how you bring people to consensus. It was probably one of the most interesting and challenging jobs that I've had. And then through that, I represented the state of Illinois in Montessori on Cape in Washington for 6 years. I've done a variety of things, but I did start as a Montessori teacher, elementary teacher.
And I do want to remind our AMS community that we've posted beautiful videos that each candidate has submitted. They're on our website. Our candidates' resumes and position statements are also on our website, so please take the time to review these videos. All these candidates have spent tremendous amount of time for this election, so please do that. I'm going to now invite Sabrina, Luz, and Nancy to join us, our 3 professional director candidates. And keep this question up, I'll ask that later. AMS is a membership organization. What do you think members value most about our organization, and how can we continue to grow in this area, or in that area?
And you're talking about growing the membership specifically?
I'm talking about what do people value about our organization?
I think this gathering is one that is very special to many Montessorians. I know that coming every year and seeing the multitude of folks doing this kind of really engaging, important work to raise the next generation so that we really can have peace is important. And we are often in community where the surrounding community doesn't understand what we are. Sometimes we might be a pasta dish served with garlic bread. So it's important for us to see the diversity of who we are as a community and see the unifying tone of what Montessori can bring.
Thank you.
Well, I think the things that I value most from the AMS have been the things that I initially was inspired by. First, the conference, and then the direction that the AMS provides for training, and how important training of our adults, both teachers, support staff, and now the heads of school requirement. I think that that's very valuable. The other part of the AMS that, being from Alaska, is very important to me is the resources of your website. It's made many improvements over the years. The marketing materials, as a specific example, is something that small schools definitely do not have the means to create on their own, and not recreating that wheel has been really valuable for our school. The AMS brochures, the magazines that we receive, the online webinars, and the opportunity to train staff from a distance has been very valuable. So I would seek to certainly not only maintain those services, but improve the connectivity for those types of resources.
So I think what I'm really excited about is that we are really focusing on research, inclusion, and professional development. And I am really thrilled that the research library and the research work that's gone on has just exploded. And so to support that is what the general education community needs to know about Montessori, that we have a vision, that we know what we're doing. And I think that that is so important, that we have research to drive our practice, that teachers know what they do in their classroom is so valued, and that we need what they're doing, their action research, their insights, to be known by the world. I also think that the vision of inclusion, which I have loved working with Lizanne about on the MIE, the new Montessori inclusion endorsement. I'm a special educator, have been for 40 years, so I believe in inclusion of all kinds and diversity. And I think the vision that AMS has now of inclusion and diversity is so cool. It's just exciting to be a member of an organization that is focusing on that. In our world where we see that diversity is such a problem in so many places, we are saying, it's not, it's great, let's embrace this. So, and then I think also professional development is something else that I'm incredibly excited about. I'm from Utah. We're a very remote state. Gina was just out as the keynote at our conference, and she made it happen for our members, who very few of them could come because of cost, to be able to receive the online synchronous, what we're doing today in presentations, is just amazing, you know, and we have a variety of things based on price. A lot of people can't access, so the access that they're recognizing is necessary, I think, is really important. And so I'm excited that we have opportunities to diversify what we're doing and to reach out to everyone.
In terms of diversity, what are specific things you think AMS could do to support this initiative?
Well, I think that I've seen such change. I mean, we have organizations now, or groups of people. We are looking at the LGBT community, and they have a group of folks that they can come together at the conferences. We're looking at our people of color. We're looking at all kinds of different opportunities. As you spoke earlier, the group of Hispanics that were, able to come together, and I see that as a recognition of something that needs to happen. This MIE endorsement, I think we're just going to see things explode. I really think that is one of the areas our public schools are struggling with, is teachers that have never really experienced working with children with disabilities, and now how trainers can update their training programs to include that.
Right. Sabrina?
Well, I appreciate the comments about inclusive classrooms, because I've always felt that Montessori, from its start, was a pedagogy that was in and of itself inclusive of all children, all ages, from all walks of life, backgrounds, religious, and we formed our schools' enrollment policies and such based on that philosophy, as I'm sure many have. And I think that as our school grows, and we're small, we've grown from 7 students to 90 in 7 years, we're seeing more and more children come to us because of the opportunities they see in our diverse classrooms. And I think that that's something that Montessori should be very proud of, and I think we could probably do a much better job of shouting from the mountaintops how excited children can be in a Montessori environment, whether they're struggling or challenged or not.
And this is your work, Luz.
Yeah, so I think what's important is that we think about what it means to be in community and what it means to be in solidarity. And those are two things that come from a place of humbleness and also come from a place of openness that has to happen when we take a critical look at who we are as people and all of the intersections of identity that we hold within ourselves, that we hold privilege, and that we also belong to groups that have been marginalized, sometimes on purpose. I mean, I said sometimes, but actually have been marginalized by a system. We are part of an education system. As the American Montessori Society, many of us are in the US education system, and we know that this system is broken. And so for those of us specifically, I've worked in the charter school movement, and my passion is public Montessori. So we work with communities to create access, and yet there's a lot of complicated issues. I've heard teachers across the country, as I've gone and consulted, saying, how do we serve 2 masters? And I hate those terms, 2 masters, when what we're trying to do is to meet the child and to supply the things that the child needs to really reach their true potential. Dr. Montessori talks about the spiritual embryo. And what I think is fascinating about that is that we as Montessori teachers have the ability, we have the tools, and we have the passion to really supply what each child needs. And we need the support of teachers in community and solidarity, of heads of school in community and solidarity, and teacher education programs that understand those things. Right. Teacher education programs have to understand the changing landscape of Montessori education based on all of the different needs, that we have international needs, we have schools that are reclaiming their heritage, and I'm speaking specifically of those in indigenous populations here in the US who are reclaiming their history, their culture, their language. This is a beautiful thing, and AMS has an opportunity to really step in and make that vision come alive.
We've talked about inclusion and diversity. If you have if you had to select one topic of concern that AMS needs to most focus on right now, what would that be and why? Outside of diversity and inclusion.
Oh boy. Well, I think one of the reasons I'm running for the board is I'm from very far away from most of you, the hubs or the bright spots of Montessori throughout the Midwest, Houston in the South, the West Coast. And I think one thing that outside of inclusion and diversity and some of those big picture topics would be, as I think you guys talked a little bit about, is the connectivity. The listservs are a wonderful resource. One thing, I haven't had an opportunity to go on one of the heads of schools retreats, but I think something like that for teachers, one thing I'm really focused on, not only in my own life, but for my staff, would be work-life balance and wellness. And our counselor focuses on wellness curriculum in our classrooms as well. And I think that remembering that teachers, as you know, that was a soft spot in my heart when you talked about it's hard. I think that focusing on wellness, and perhaps the AMS could create not only maybe a listserv about some of the ideas that other schools do, or how we could implement wellness programming into our adult communities. I think that would be very valuable.
I think to echo that, Dr. Montessori talks about the 4 planes, and I would propose that those of us who are leading schools are in this 4th plane, and perhaps maybe there's a 5th plane of development that we need to consider, that as people in community and also leaders, that we are also developing. And again, that takes humbleness of spirit, and it also takes critical thought. So maybe the question for AMS is, how do we support teachers who are already in the field, heads of schools, teacher educators, to continue to reach their full potential? Because it's not as though in Dr. Montessori's model, you reach 24 and you're done. There's much, much more work to do.
Right.
So how do we think about that as well?
Thank you. Nancy?
I am the chairman of the care committee right now, which is the elder care committee, and I am really hoping that we had a meeting this morning, that we can just get up and move on this, because this is like new virgin territory, and it's so exciting. I was fortunate enough to do the AMI training do their training just so I can get a vision of what is their focus, and this is kind of like, for me, I'm in the 5th plane of development, so I really get it, and I've said the same thing. I think we have a 5th plane of development that we need to look at. I feel like that's the time we can reinvent ourselves, and so many great things can go on at this time of our lives, and we need to support a growing group of people in our society that I don't think we are even aware of in 10 years what the effect of this many aging individuals is going to be on our society. We're in trouble, in my opinion, if we don't do it. And AMS has Dr. Montessori's vision was for everyone.
Right.
And she had this idea of respect, and care centers have problems with that oftentimes. So being able to move forward in this area, I'm very hopeful that we can continue. And go there.
Thank you. I would like to invite our 3 board-nominated candidates that are going to be on the slate. And I would like to take a minute just to talk about the slate, because members ask, what is a slate and what's the purpose of a slate? And so let's first invite Janet, Jeffrey, and Sharon Damore. So as a board, we have a specific role, and so we're looking at not only the fiscal responsibility of the organization, we're looking at what skill sets we need sometimes on the board to run effectively as a whole. And one area that we focus on is development. A lot of the work that we do requires development efforts, creating this culture of giving that we talk about. Finance, where our number one priority is the fiscal responsibility of the organization. So having specific skill sets, looking at our finances, auditing our finances, looking at our budget and all of those areas that relate to that, as well as consistency. So certain board members have an opportunity to run again for a second term. And so those board members that have successfully completed a first term and have made the right contributions are continuing work or in the middle of doing work. We need them to stay on so that we can continue what we're working on. Our members sometimes that we put on a slate for membership to agree to or hopefully vote yes, because that's what we need right now at this time on the board. And so these three candidates are going to help us with the skill sets that are lacking right now on our current board. And Sharon Damore is right now already serving on the board, and hopefully we'll have her again for a second term. And so my question to you is, you know AMS is a membership organization. What do you think our members value most about AMS, and how can we continue to grow in this area? Anyone can answer.
Well, I'll jump right in.
Sure.
AMS serves a very, very, very diverse population. And in that diverse population, there's a huge, diverse need for services. And AMS right now is providing, which you've heard today, many, many different kinds of services. And we need to increase those services and expand those services. I'm on the Montessori Life Advisory Board, and the service that we provide with articles, ideas, and also a place where the people who service our schools with materials have an opportunity to have a voice in advertising, things like that. Montessori offers professional development is really, really important. I was part of the Wisconsin Montessori Association, and I work a lot with the Association of Illinois Montessori Schools, and AMS is also servicing state organizations. AMS can't do it by themselves, so they rely on grassroots, and that's where a lot of the state organizations are being supported. And AMS being a face and a supporter of the state organizations is also really, really important. Conferences and having an opportunity where thousands of people can come together and share not only the joy of the work that they do, but also the joy of spending time with each other, meeting each other, and sharing and connecting with each other, and then going and doing some incredible professional development in different activities that they get to choose from. AMS is now spreading this online. It's kind of like the Super Bowl, that lots of people out there can get an opportunity to now be in a classroom, but sitting in their living room at home, which is also really wonderful as well. But this is the, AMS is right, I think, on a cusp. And this conference is kind of a key point in AMS's future. We had to close the registration very early, and that cut a lot of people who would love to have come to Washington and spend some time with friends that we're not able to do. So we're at a cusp where we need to make a great leap forward. And there's a lot of work to be done in that, and a lot of vision that needs to be done with that, and a lot of thinking out of the box. And I think that's where one place that we need to be going.
Thank you. Janet?
An organization is only as strong as the leadership that is provided. And all of us will take that role very seriously as a member of the board. It is critical that the board set the vision for the organization and also give the organizational staff the tools and the support and the ability in order to successfully carry out that vision. And AMS is a volunteer organization. None of us would be here if it weren't for the choice of the members to be a part of this organization. So it's critical that we as board members continue to provide numerous opportunities to listen to what the membership wants from the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Sharon?
Well, I'm the incumbent.
So everybody's going to say, why is she coming back before she answers the question? But I love this work. And, you know, I have been a volunteer, a professional volunteer for AMS since 1998. And I have to tell you, I'm honored to sit here next to these new voices and new collaborators in my journey as a Montessorian. But I also believe that we are beginning to meet the needs of the membership. And with our strategic goals, we will continue to focus on some of the work I've been involved with for a very long time, and that's research and policy. The Montessori Public Policy Initiative, the collaboration between AMI USA and AMS. We have to continue this work. We have to provide great professional development. Yeah, I'm so proud to be part of this. And it is about supporting the teachers. It is about supporting the heads of schools. It's about making sure that we are thinking about quality schools and quality teacher education programs. So as leaders, we have a commitment, and we have to create the work opportunities for us to lead and for you to join us in doing that kind of work.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to open up the questions to anyone who wants to answer. But before I do, I want to ask one. No, do you have Gary? Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have several questions. This is open to the entire group, and then you can manage, Munir. What would you do to ensure that professional development for teachers is affordable, accessible, and high quality?
I'll say that we need to continue on the path of creating a culture of giving. As we've read online, fundraising is a big part of any nonprofit's work, and I think that the teacher education program scholarships that are available, the Emerging Leaders program that is now in its third year, is really valuable. I think that schools in themselves have to understand how critical professional development is for all teachers and the support staff. And I think that creating that culture and the giving guidance for fundraising and for budgeting, professional development, wellness training, and the like is critical going forward in order to support the teacher movement.
Go ahead, Sharon.
So, Sabrina, thank you. And I have to admit, I love asking for money. Don't ask me why. But we are seeing foundations. We are seeing groups that are interested in us because, you know what? We do education the best. But when it comes to professional development, we've got to help our schools. We've got to think of ways to co-op, to consolidate efforts. And it has to be high quality. And believe me, AMS is spending time now on that, thinking through that with strategic goals. So I think it's a great time, and I do think that we're going to think about the economics. We have to, Gary. Thank you. That's a great question. Did it come from you or someone else? All right, so I don't want to give you credit. I apologize for that.
Debbie?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, professional development is sort of fundamental to everything we do, and I really do believe as heads of schools it has to come from the top. We have to create cultures where we support it, we free teachers up to participate, but I also think, you know, we can only do so much at the national level as we are experiencing today at this conference, but I want to go back again to regional resources because I think that some of these regional conferences have been amazing and they have grown over the years. So I encourage everybody to kind of grab it because every region, I mean, there's so many amazing teachers and people out there with expertise that we just don't resource enough or source them for our faculty. So I agree, in order for us to develop the quality we're talking about, it has to come through development.
Thank you. Michelle?
So you asked a couple of the candidates about inclusion and diversity, but there was a question, and I felt maybe the whole board, these are two questions that go together, so I'm just going to combine them. How will you address our Montessori identity, issues regarding access and equity for all children, and where do you feel AMS fits as an organization in the conversation about inclusion, diversity, and anti-bias education?
I think we have a real opportunity to do that because Dr. Mono, at the heart of it is, again, this idea of the spiritual embryo. And if we're not really addressing all of those issues, and we're talking about equity, we're talking about anti-bias and anti-bias practices and pedagogy, sustaining culturally relevant pedagogy and practice. All of those things are so important, and they're part of what Dr. Montessori calls us to do. We cannot help that spiritual embryo develop unless we really take a critical view on that. And that also includes students who have exceptional needs. And I think that's something that is part of every teacher education program, but needs again to be supported throughout a professional's career. There are always new topics, there are always new ways in which to help those children. So I think that AMS, because there's an organizing body, because there is a structure to it, has an opportunity, but it also takes a will.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sharon is currently serving on the board, so you can share what the board is currently working on or what we're doing.
My age or institutional memory that you asked me to answer this question. Okay. That's a really good, and most of you don't know this, but our #1 strategic goal in our new strategic plan is diversity and inclusivity and equity. And we will continue our work with Derek Gay, who is an equity and inclusivity consultant. So we are most certainly paying attention to that, but I have to say this real quickly. Forgive me, but I read Dr. Nancy Rambush's dissertation. You have to read it if you're interested. It's metaphorical. She was a change agent, but I'm reading it the other day, and she said, I named the society the American Montessori Society. Montessori is for the patron. American is about culturally responsive education. She gave us that charge, and so we have to do this and do this right to make sure that we are inclusive, just as Nancy intended it for us to be.
Thank you.
Can I just...
Nancy?
So I think,
After Nancy, you can go.
I think that we have to be very confident in stepping out in a world that is growing in the public sector. I think we have to be very aware of the variety of individuals as far as teachers and families and children, and that we need our teachers prepared. And I don't know if we've always done a great job at doing that. I find I stay awake at night sometimes about how I'm training teachers to deal with trauma, how to deal with inclusivity, how to deal with that child that has a special need that just, they don't have that in their training, and how to work with that. And I think we need to do a better job in teacher training to update this knowledge, this research, these skills, and I really hope that we can be more research informed and continue to grow that knowledge base. And almost, I mean, I hate to say this, but requiring our TEPs to advance in those areas is very important, in my opinion.
I think everyone's going to be excited when they see our new strategic goals. Patricia, I didn't mean to cut you. Please go.
All right, no problem. I think AMS, the question was what role should AMS play? I think AMS has a great opportunity actually to move the inclusion message forward, but I think it's a difficult thing. This is a society problem, this is an educational problem, it's a systemic issue, so I think it has to come top down and bottom up. I think it begins with increasing diversity in teacher training programs and making ourselves more attractive to diverse communities that haven't heard of Montessori or teacher training programs. It has to do with enrollment issues in your school and how do you attract that. It has to do with, I mean, it just goes, I'm not going to go through every part of this system. So I think it's complicated, and I think it requires probably every subcommittee of this board to be tackling at the level of the issue that they're overseeing to make progress. But it's an aspirational goal on the one hand that has a difficult social picture to sort of tackle and improve upon.
Candace.
I would add that another perspective is to listen to our teachers, and I say that as the mom of a 7-year-old who is that kid sometimes in this classroom, but I'm also the teacher who goes into groups with other teachers and says, so here's who these kids are, and here's my experience, here's hours of his occupational therapy, and here's how it will benefit the children that you have today, so that even if until we can formalize the professional development that will get our teachers there, looking to the teacher leaders who are in our programs now, who have the hard-won experience, and asking them to share what they have is another way to kind of build some anti-bias, diversity perspectives into our schools.
Debbie?
I was just going to say, just on I think what everybody is saying is very true, and I think it is a very complicated problem, but on a very practical level, I think that those of us who work in schools with boards, those boards don't have enough training. They themselves don't understand the complexity of the problem. And I think when boards are trained in a certain way, you can have amazing outcomes. And so one example is the school that I was at. The board came up with we believe statements. And through those we believe statements, we really identified what our practice, what our aspirations were around diversity and inclusion. And the school really took that on to live by those values. And so I do think that boards are kind of left out of this equation in a way that doesn't help move the agenda forward. So I would just like to put a plug in that I think AMS as an organization can do a lot to help support and to train boards in the direction we need them to go.
Thank you. We're going to move forward. Gary, you have another question?
The audience does. So this is a question that is relevant to Montessori in the public sector. How would you advocate for the issuance of Montessori certification within your state's credentialing programs?
I can jump in and start. I'm not in the public sector, but I work with a number of public schools through our environmental education program, basically out working with the Milwaukee Public Schools and Chicago Public Schools. And one of the things that I've noticed and has been a great concern of mine is the growth in the public sector without the growth in highly qualified teachers. Teachers that go into the public sector tend to have a much more difficult time than they do in the private sector. There seems to be a lot more support for Montessori teachers in the private sector. So the advocacy and the advocacy work that has been going on to give credentialed, MACD-credentialed Montessori teachers their state licensure has made a large leap in the direction of allowing high qualified but non-certified, originally did not have a teacher certification, to be able to go into the public sector and support the public sector. And I think that work is now spreading. I know in my state it's happened. It has happened in a number of states that has allowed highly qualified teachers. So that's important work, but it also has a catalyst to it, and that is that we cannot just rely on already trained teachers. We also need to be relying on training centers really looking at training in regards to how that training is working in the public sector. For training a teacher for the private sector, it looks differently, I believe, from what I've experienced and observed, looks differently than it does in the public sector. And we need more teachers, and we need more mentors in our schools, especially in our public schools.
I really want to appreciate the work that MPPI is doing to help states understand what Montessori certification looks like at the primary and also the elementary level. I come from a very large state. I come from California, and we don't have a statewide Montessori organizing body. And so that makes it a little bit difficult to work through the system of getting a public policy initiative going in the state. So I think it's also about, again, what you said about looking at our teacher training programs and how can they achieve state status which is an actual passion project of mine in the state of California to align our program with the teacher performance expectations in California. So if AMS can help teacher training programs look at the state guidelines, I think that would be such a help to help the movement continue into the public sector, which is what we're looking at.
This question here is a great segue. What are your thoughts on online learning and teacher education programs?
Well, I think it definitely depends on the program and the person as well. So you have teachers who just want to get through with it just in order to be able to work at a place, and there are teachers who are passionate about Montessori. And those teachers who are passionate about Montessori on an online course will be able to, digest all this information and keep it. Whereas if it's just somebody who just want to, get through with it, will just do the online course and not be able to grab the information. And I also think that if there were to be online learning, it should most definitely be paired with practicing at the same time. I had a friend who had the course in Mexico while I did it in MTTI in Florida. I did it in 2 years, and I was working at the time. And it was amazing, because there were things at the beginning that I would see in class, and I was like, I just couldn't get my head. And then when I was with the kids, I had the aha moment. Now I get it, Whereas my friend, it wasn't until she was in the Montessori classroom that she really understood the concepts behind the materials. And so being far away from the States and not having a TE program, I most definitely want my teachers to be able to have it. So I would enjoy having an online course, even if it doesn't mean having the entire course online, but at least for them to be able to have part of that and be able to, learn Montessori long distance.
I think we've got to be careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've got to be sure that we keep the integrity of the authenticity of our programs, but we've also got to be aware that we're in an ever-evolving digital network, and we have to be, I think we need to teach grace and courtesy, digital grace and courtesy. I think we need to look at the importance of what do we teach, like you said, what do we feel is appropriate to teach online versus what's not going to be translated well online. How do we make sure that a teacher is going through that spiritual transformation when we don't have that direct contact with that individual? I did my master's online, but I oftentimes missed that human contact. So I wonder how we're going to balance that. It concerns me greatly that transformative piece could be missing if we don't have that human touch involved in that.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
I think it's not just about online learning and whether that's good or bad or good for one or not for another. I think it's about innovation and being creative in our efforts to not only be inclusive for children, but inclusive for adults. And, for those of us who are very far away from training centers, particularly those that are accredited and AMS approved, I think that the online components, as Nancy said, if we're thoughtful about the content and the delivery, I think that it can be very valuable, and it could be something someone does with a team at their school, not just a one-on-one, so that there is a human element or a personal connection. I think TEPs too could look into innovation as far as sending their expertise to other places, partnering with schools or state organizations to provide not only the online pieces of their presentations, but perhaps the human element, not the entire school campus, but finding ways to create spaces outside of their campus, but using their knowledge and their experience.
Janet, as a researcher, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Oh, gosh. Certainly, this is not an area where I have expertise, but as you all were so articulately responding to the question, I was thinking about, I'm at Baylor University, I teach educational psychology, and Baylor's a private university, and in my lifetime, I never thought that I would see Baylor University introducing online degrees. I thought we would always be what's referred to as a bricks and mortar campus, because we have had, in the past, very traditional students attending Baylor. But we are now starting online degrees at Baylor, and I am involved in one in a small way. And I think it's no longer a question of whether we should have online learning. I think that train has left the station. I think that, as Sabrina said, it's a question of quality and building in those monitors and those benchmarks and those checkpoints for assuring that you're providing a quality education. I believe it can be done. I think it's challenging, but I think that it is something we as an organization must embrace, but yet maintain that monitoring of the quality.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. We're going to move on because there's quite a few questions, and I know Michelle here, I feel her here, has a question. Thank you for sharing.
This comes from the audience. How can AMS be more supportive of schools who can't afford AMS membership?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Thanks. It's not mine.
I think that's, again, an issue of, so Sabrina was talking about a culture of giving, and that can be something that some parts of our membership can get behind and understand and be a part of. There's all different levels of types of fundraising that need to happen, and also giving that needs to happen. And there has to be multiple pathways to funding this movement and what we do. And so some of it is going to look like seeking small family foundation monies, seeking large grants and foundational monies, and then private donors, both large and small. So that part of it is something that AMS as an organization needs to understand. Mm-hmm. I don't actually have the answer to that, but I think that's part of it, is how do we define giving, and where are we asking for that money? It sounds like Sharon likes knocking on doors.
Yeah, send her out. Go, Sharon.
Yeah.
Go, Sharon.
I happen to be good in a schmooze.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the things that we need to look at, is not just asking for more money from our membership, but also, which I think we can do, it's also talking to alum of Montessori. We have so many, not so many, but we now have Montessori high school students that have graduated. So it's how do they give back to their community? Maybe there's an alum network, but then again, also talking to small foundations, large foundations, small donors, and larger donors as well.
Thank you.
Another way of, I think, of looking at a membership process is schools have different needs, and they have different needs from a national organization. And as a starting, very, very beginning school, you have certain needs, and maybe layering the membership in some way, because a beginning school may not be able to afford a full membership right off the bat, but still wants to be able to gain the resources. And that helps us because we're cultivating a new school that may think, oh, I can't afford it, so I'm not going to become a member. And then they grow, and then it seems to just go by the wayside. This would be a good way of introducing schools. So creating layers. Another aspect is payment plans, like we do in our schools. Writing that check at the beginning of August sometimes is a little more difficult because schools also run on payment plans and may not have the money at that stage. So having a payment plan which makes it more affordable as the months go through the years. I think there's a lot of creative ways that you can adjust the costing in the membership and also the services that are provided, layering it so that those schools that may not be able to afford it can have an affordable tier. And as they grow, they can move up those affordable tiers.
Come to the annual meeting tonight. We have great information about what the board is doing. Yes.
But I would just offer a compliment to what the AMS is already doing to support schools that are not members. We are the only full member school in Alaska. There are 11 schools, but they use the webinars. they are able to purchase those for on-demand use. They can read the magazine now online. All of the videos that are available to show your parent community, all of the links to books and articles and the research that's there. I mean, I think that it's a great resource. It's vast, and schools just need to take the time to look into what is available online. Most of it's free already. So.
I do think we need to bring some creativity into the costing structure. I will say that, you know, to become an AMS member, if you're going through accreditation, sometimes I think we disincentivize, and I do think we're marginalizing some of the people in our community, because when you do have to write a check for thousands of dollars, whether it's for accreditation or whether it's for membership, a lot of schools really have to weigh up that resource. So while I don't know all the ins and outs, and I certainly do think AMS has offered more of an a la carte type of membership, which I think is awesome, I do think the sensitivity around what we're charging has to really be, not that to suggest that you guys haven't done that, I just want to say for the record, but I do know that in talking to a lot of schools, that is one of the reasons they won't go for accreditation.
I also think that we are not knowing how to communicate the purpose of membership well to our public sector. I mean, that is foreign to a public school to have to pay to become an accredited member of a program that maybe they've got half of their teachers are AMS trained, maybe they've got, you know, and here we are saying, oh, well, in order for you to be an internship site, you've got to be a AMS full member school, and wow, in Utah, I don't know, Duna, how many AMS member schools do we have? None. One. So it's very, very hard where we are, just like you're talking about in Alaska, to afford it, to have the viability for it is not, it's something, and we have 11 charter schools now in Utah, Montessori charter schools. None of them understand why that's important and can't afford it.
Right. Thank you. Gary? You're caught up?
I'm caught up. Do we have any questions from the audience? Anybody come in late that didn't get a card that would like to ask a question of the candidates?
I still have more questions here.
Okay. Just checking.
Well, this one.
We did this one. So we'll end it with one question, and everyone will get the opportunity to respond. And so I'll ask the question, and we'll decide, should it be random or should we go in order? Actually, let the audience decide. Random? Random, all right. What is one thing unique and different about you that you will bring to the AMS board?
I'll start.
Start?
Random, you're it.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm the first Hispanic to be on the board, but that would definitely be the thing that I would bring, diversity. I would love to exchange what I see in education in a third world country and, you know, learn from people who have been in the AMS for all these years, to share ideas and to help each other out. But I would mostly say diversity.
I'm black. I'm just kidding.
You're really
But really, I think that's it. I think the fact that I'm mom to a child who has learning differences, who does not fit any sort of neurotypical mold, which means that my perspective and my understanding of when we talk about inclusion and children coming into our classrooms, I understand that as a teacher who has these amazing children who do not see the world in a typical way. And as my students like to say, I have to take one of them home with me every day. Every day he goes home with me. So I think that, and those two things don't make me special, but I do think that they are two perspectives that kind of set me apart. And there's that other third thing. Yeah.
No more random, we're just going in line.
Might as well.
One of the things I wanted to say is like what I value about Montessori is the variety of people that are attracted to it and the different backgrounds that they bring, and I think this group here is representative of that. And I think I am as well. I came to Montessori from a probably a different trajectory. I used to teach psychology at the university level, so I bring that perspective of informed by research. It was research that informed my decision to bring my child to Montessori. I saw what the classrooms offered for children and how well thought out it all was. I am a Montessori parent on top of that. I've been in the classroom. I've been an administrator. I'm from Venezuela, so I'm with you. So I think I would, all of us bring the life experiences that we've had along the way to these positions, and we'll bring a unique lens. And again, that's the beauty of governing by group, is because all of us bring a different part to it, and we'll be able to inform solutions and discussions based on our different backgrounds.
Thank you.
Well, I think for me, now that I'm a Montessori grandmother of 4, I think having, it has only reinforced for me over the years why what we all do out here is so important and so necessary. And I think as we go into the future and life continues to be so uncertain, I think that for those of us involved in Montessori schools, that our mission and our values only get more and more solidified. I think that over the years I've had many privileged experiences to work with so many different schools, boards, teachers, and different organizations. And for me, it is sort of the culmination of my ability to serve, as I have done for many years. But I also think that there's a lot, I have a lot of opinions about a lot of different things. And I think for AMS, I've been able to, over the years, there's things that I love, there's opportunities I think that exist. But hearing from the membership in terms of those needs is just something that I look forward if the opportunity presents itself. So, and if it doesn't, it's great. I think you guys are doing, a lot of really hard work out there, and I think we should all just remember why we're all here, bored or not. So, yeah.
Well, I have a degree in petroleum engineering, and I never thought that I would be an educator, but I am so very passionate about and proud of the fact that our Montessori pedagogy is the only scientifically based pedagogy out there where you can go into schools all over the world. We've found schools in our travels in Costa Rica and Mexico, and we walk in, and my 4-year-old will just go right alongside, pick up, any kind of material. And we're very humbled by the fact that it's an international pedagogy that we all so dearly love. I think the other unique part of my experience so far along my journey is that I was just a crazy inspired parent at one point, and then have been able to network and connect with those who did endeavor to be educators in order to help me to realize my personal and professional development goals. And so I'm not only proud of the idea of our pedagogy, but proud of the people who work to champion its principles.
I like to say that I've been in Montessori education for over 4 decades. And I can say that because I started as a primary student in a small Montessori school outside of Detroit. And to have an educational system, and to be clear, I was only there for the 3rd year. So they allowed me to come into a primary program in the 3rd year. And my parents could only afford 3 days a week mornings. And that experience absolutely shaped who I am as a person, who I am as a parent, who I am as an educator, and who I am as a leader. And if an educational system can do that in that short of a time, you gotta get behind it. And I've been part of the Montessori movement as a student, as a parent, as a lower elementary teacher, as a charter school leader,
and now as a teacher educator, I just am so passionate about it, just from every fiber of my being, because I understand what it means. I understand what it can be, and it's that little flame that I carry inside of me, and that's why I'm so excited when I talk to new teachers, because I can tell them this is how it feels. And when they practice with me, I can tell them, I see what I can help them understand what it needs to feel like. So for me, it's just that special touch that I experienced it as a child, and it's to even be here on this stage is very exciting, and I would love to continue my passion for Montessori.
Thank you.
I started my career in 1978 in the first special ed classroom in the district in Kansas City that I was working in. And my classroom was in the back of a hallway in a building that was considered condemned. I had 27 children ages 1st through 6th grade in my class. 13 of them had been institutionalized and never been in public or any type of education until they walked into my classroom. I had 3 sets of identical twins that had developed twin talk in the institution they had been in. I'm passionate about special education. Dr. Montessori was passionate about special education. When I teach my inclusion course in my training program, I talk about her being the mother of special education. And we have such a gift. I looked for years for something that truly was developmentally appropriate for all children, and I found it. And when my own children went to Montessori, I was jumping up and down because I was like a child in a candy store. It was like, give me these materials, I've got to take them to my classroom, you know. It was the greatest gift of my life to find it. But what really is the greatest gift is the philosophy. It meets the needs of all people. It serves a purpose for every child. It is not exclusive. It is inclusive. It is loving. It is respectful. And I am so very grateful to be a part of something. And I have to say, I'm probably the only one up here that's not AMS trained. I was trained by a very unique woman who, back in the day, she worked with Nancy Rambush and did training with Nancy Rambush and worked with her. And she also was AMI trained, and she taught me to be inclusive of all Montessorians. And I am so thankful for that, because I have been blessed to be an AMS TEP director. I've been so supported and so included. And I went to New Orleans for the AMI refresher course 2 weeks ago to present with Paige Bray, that I'm working with on a higher ed exchange between an AMI training program and our training program. And they were wonderful. They embraced me there and said, oh, you're an AMS trainer, come, we want to hear what you have to say. That's where we have to be to make this movement move forward. We have to not look at, where was your training, who are you, why are you not like us, you know. And I think that's something that I really respect about the growth that we're seeing and the vision we're working on here.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Believe me, that's a hard act to follow. I'm not going to be.
Sorry, but you're my twin.
That's right. We're twins, and I am honored to be her twin. Listening to Nancy, I remember a very profound statement from Betsy Coe that my husband and I heard years ago, and she said, Montessori is not for all parents, but it is for all children. So I believe, not that it's unique to me, but I believe one of my strengths is the ability to persuade and the ability to proselytize. And I began that 27 years ago when I said to my husband, who had spent years in the military and had gone to West Point and had grown up in a very different environment in which I'd grown up in. And our son was 3 years old, and I said, let's go visit this Montessori school. in Waco, where we live. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, no, I don't think so. Isn't that a school for hippie children?" So through my power of persuasion, I kept saying, "No, we need to go visit, we need to go visit." Well, if he were here today, he would probably want to talk to you for hours on end about how fantastic Montessori education is. He became president of the board of our local school 2 different terms, and anytime we're in a conversation with young parents, I don't even have to say it. He begins the conversation about, "Oh my gosh, have you gone to visit Waco Montessori School yet?" Because that is where you have to put your child. So I take all the credit for him becoming the conversation. No, Waco Montessori takes the credit, and Montessori itself. As an educator in a traditional teacher education program, I believe that one of my gifts is proselytizing about Montessori. And in the years that I've been doing this, I think we have certainly made many inroads, but we still have many inroads to continue to make, because there are so many misconceptions out there, even today in 2019, about what is Montessori education. So I feel like my proselytizing, my persuasion, I say, "Please come with me, go visit this school. Let me walk with you and explain to you this magic that you're seeing occurring in the classroom every day."
Thank you.
So I was thinking as we were talking, the things that through my experiences, I find myself to be extremely fortunate. Over the last 22 years, I have visited hundreds and hundreds of Montessori schools, and I've spoken to thousands and thousands of Montessori parents through the work that I do in our environmental education program. And I spend a lot of time in a residential experience with Montessori teachers who get up early in the morning with their hair in all disarray, looking for the coffee machine and having a cup of coffee with them, and then spending the day in the woods with all of their children, and then hearing from their parents how incredible this life-changing experience was for their students, and then going back to the school the following year and just seeing the kids are already completely organized. And so I bring an experience of many, many Montessori schools, many different Montessori schools, public, private. I've been to Asia. I've spent a lot of time in Asia and Europe, and I've seen a lot of Montessori schools overseas. And AMS now, as you have seen and experienced, has a really big connection to Asia. So I've worked a lot with many different kinds of people and many different kinds of schools. I'm also bringing another 2 aspects to the board. One, I'm a really happy and kind of optimistic and excited personality. I don't let...
And you have a great accent.
Thank you. I don't let robots or walls stand in my way. If I have an idea and I think it's a great idea, I go for it and I work really, really hard to make it happen. And I started a school when everyone told me, "Oh, excuse me, you can't start a school. What are you doing?" I started a school and I built a beautiful Montessori school it's on 140 acres in the middle of nowhere, but it's still a wonderful school. And then the last thing that I think that I bring is an energy. And I will use that energy to make sure that the work that I'm given and I'm charged with, that I can fulfill that and take it through to an incredible conclusion.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Last but not least, I don't know, Nancy and I are both from Oklahoma, and that's our accents, and we're also special educators. And so when I left the Houston Public Schools and I came back to Chicago in the late 80s, of course I didn't have certification I needed to work in the public schools, so I went to a Montessori school. And I walked in the door, I walked into a classroom, and all at once I thought, "Oh my gosh, these teachers know how to individualize instruction. Who taught them to do this?" And I was just so taken by it. And they actually made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And then, of course, I had to deal with a parent board. And so one of the first individuals that I met was Nancy Rambush at a Heads of School retreat in the late 80s. And so I started complaining about these crazy parents that seemed to care so much about their children, but they also wanted to tell me how to hire personnel. And Nancy looked at me and she said, "Honey, have they fired you?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You get back in there. You have work to do." Well, I didn't know she was talking about for the rest of my life. So Nancy was really my inspiration. As other mentors such as, Selma and Desmond Perry, I've had wonderful mentors who inspired me. And I always talk about that one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Maria Montessori is within the child lies the fate of the future. And maybe I'm a Pollyanna. I wish for elimination of violence and peace for your children, for your grandchildren, for your great-grandchildren. I believe the conduit for doing that is Montessori education. And I believe that, I have the strength and the tenacity to join this new set of voices and still be the institutional memory of this organization, to respect the patrons and those who come before us, but to really look forward and see what it takes to include everyone and to increase our access for children in Montessori education.
Well, Sharon, thank you. We have an incredible pool of AMS board candidates. I wish we could have all of you on the board. Humbly, this was really, I'm so appreciative of the time that you have given, the thoughtfulness and the work that you put into being here with us today. And from the current AMS board and on behalf of our membership, I'm going to take that on and say thank you. Really, thank you. Let's take it.